my previous video, I mentioned how Bernie Sanders at this point in time is the current frontrunner of the Democratic Party and may possibly become the nominee. Now, of course, this is not set in stone, as he still has to maintain his momentum, and he has to deal with the future primaries and caucuses. He has to deal with the other candidates that are vying for the same position. He has to deal with the fact that the DNC is not behind him in any way, and of course, the super delegates who, at this point in time, are not committed, and I'm pretty sure most of them would go to any other candidate except Bernie Sanders. Now, let's say he does become the nominee. A lot of people, myself included, believe that Donald Trump would still defeat him in a landslide, just because of the fact that he's a socialist and a lot of crazy stuff that he has said over the years. Case in point, what he said about Cuba on Monday. Now, he was interviewed by CNN and they were talking about the Fidel Castro's regime, and Bernie Sanders' feelings towards it. He said specifically that we shouldn't look at Fidel Castro's regime in a entirely negative light. He goes on to actually praise Fidel Castro's literacy program, which supposedly allowed Cubans to be able to read and write. Although someone should fact check Bernie, because this was established by a dictatorship that probably controlled whatever the hell these guys read, and even whatever the hell they wrote to prevent the rise of opposition. This is not the first time that Bernie Sanders said crazy stuff like this. We went so far as to praise China for supposedly raising people out of poverty, despite the fact that China's communistic track record shows kind of the opposite. He even praised Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, and its socialism before the entire country went tits up. And let's not forget that famous video about what Bernie Sanders said about brand lines being supposedly a good thing. That's already those words are coming to bite him in the ass, and already it's showing, because a lot of Democrats, a lot of them who are not as far left as he is, and that includes a lot of the candidates who are trying to compete against him, have actually denounced a lot of what he says. Pete Buttigieg has actually said that he was dismayed over the comments, and even Tom Steyer actually went so far as he would not praise unelectable leaders who do not have any democratic checks and balances. And that was definitely and it was a reference to what Bernie Sanders said about Fidel Castro. Already the candidates are against Bernie Sanders on this specific issue, and they're using that as ammunition against him. And I wouldn't be surprised if it would affect him in the primary, but nonetheless, I'm pretty sure that this is also going to give Donald Trump a lot of ammunition, and I will mention him later in this video. But still, even in the for the average Democratic voter, it's showing how much people are denouncing Bernie Sanders. While it is true that currently Bernie Sanders still has the momentum from at least the voters who voted in the primaries, there is still a lot of Democratic voters that just don't like Bernie Sanders or what he has to say about socialism and his praising of dictatorships such as those in China or Cuba. In fact, there was a lot of outrage by Democratic voters in Florida. of all places, Florida. I find this kind of funny because a lot of people in the state of Florida, a lot of them come from Cuba. Many of these guys fled Cuba, their oppressive regime, and came all the way through to Florida and stayed there. And they're not liking what Bernie Sanders has to say. Of course, that is just one contingent of obviously has a problem with Bernie Sanders. I could go on with the independents themselves, and I will also. But the fact that there's so much outrage in Florida over what he said speaks big time of the huge division within the Democratic Party, and a major disconnect between Bernie Sanders and the average voter. Because even now, socialism remains heavily unpopular. At this point in time, there are even people from Venezuela who've come into the United States trying to find a way to escape the oppressive socialistic regime by Nicolas Maduro. There's already been major articles of the flooding of the major exodus of Venezuelans trying to go into places such as Colombia, Brazil, of course, the United States, and other places just to escape the situation there. Which, by the way, need I mention that the entire country is starving as a result of many of Nicolas Maduro's and Hugo Chavez's policies. Again, this is kind of funny to me. It's kind of funny how it's coming from a Democratic fathers. Well, although I'm not really surprised that as a result. Should Bernie Sanders become the nominee? Already, I think that he would lose in the heavy landslide. People are thinking of Water Mondale situation or a McGovern situation. Possibly that could be the potential issue. I mean, after all, no one back into 2016 election, no one thought that the blue wall itself, the Midwest, would actually be handed over to Donald Trump, and as it turns out, it was. So it could. So there's always that possibility. And considering like I said before, there's the major disconnect of Democrats. There are many moderate Democrats who do not like Bernie Sanders, and I'm pretty sure many of them would either not vote at all, vote for a third party, or even a significant portion of them would even go so far as to vote for Donald Trump. That's how much they do not like Bernie Sanders, and that's how much they will stand against him if he's the nominee. Of course, now this is where I get into the part of the independents. According to an NPR poll, 58% of independents have an unfavorable view of socialism. Only 28% of independent voters have a favorable view. 30% gap. That alone would easily crush Bernie Sanders. And I'm pretty sure a lot of those independents, just from the fact that Bernie Sanders is a socialist, would definitely go on as to vote for Donald Trump. Many of the independents would probably vote for Donald Trump again, like they did in the 2016 election, just to probably kind of like many of their reasons back in 2016, like how they wanted to spite Hillary Clinton and the establishment. In this case, they want to spite Bernie Sanders and the far left movement that's currently festering the Democratic Party. And of course, this is definitely all of this is going to be a major issue for Bernie Sanders because he needs a lot of these swing states. And considering that there's a lot of, like I said before, there's outrage in the state of Florida, which is not only a moderate state, it's a battleground state. It has been the battleground state for such a long time. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot lose Florida. Florida is very significant. It has 29 electoral votes. There is no other way to deny the importance of Florida, especially within the Electoral College. I'm pretty sure that Bernie Sanders would lose it, considering that the average voter within Florida is not so prone to progressivism. In fact, there are some people that are actually claiming that the Democrats actually suffered in the 2018 elections because of their association with Bernie Sanders. I don't know if that's true, but it may have some weight. And of course, let's not forget about the fact that Donald Trump has been doing well with the economy. Here's the thing. Bernie Sanders, a socialist, wants to raise taxes, wants more spending programs, wants to expand universal health care, all this stuff, which is completely opposite of what Donald Trump has been doing. Donald Trump, as president, he has managed to cut taxes and has managed to grow a huge amount of jobs, at over 7 million, as he stated within his State of the Union address. 7 million jobs. And Bernie Sanders wants to get rid of all of that. Yeah, which one would you go for? Seriously, tell me, which one would you go for? Donald Trump, who cut your taxes, gave you your money, has grown the economy, has lowered the unemployment rate, or Bernie Sanders, who wants to raise taxes and wants the government to grow and wants to pay for a lot of crap like universal health care, Medicare for all, etc., etc. Seriously, which one would you go for? If you said Donald Trump, all that alone, it's just this economic incentive. The fact that you would say Donald Trump only shows economic incentive. This is why I think Bernie Sanders will still lose. While I said that there's a possibility that he may become the nominee, I don't think he will win the general election. For the fact that he said a lot of these crazy stuff defending dictators, how a lot of the Democratic Party is actually divided and many of them are against him, even at the individual voter level. And of course the fact that socialism isn't popular, and the fact that Donald Trump has been succeeding within the economy. Donald Trump has been doing good, and that's why Bernie Sanders, he would be easily crushed. Donald Trump will be able to take states like Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the Midwest, he would be able to do that very easily. He will wipe the floor with Bernie Sanders. And at this point in time, if that does happen, if he does become the nominee, and if he and they do go off to, if he does go off against Donald Trump, he will definitely lose the election. And this time, Bernie Sanders supporters cannot say that the Democratic Party cheated them out of this. My name is Noah, me and all the truth. Please post your comments down below, like this video, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also, if you have any issues regarding my videos, such as how I make them, my speech, how I frame them, or any improvements you suggest, or any subjects you want me to talk about, please post them down in the comment section down below, or just directly message me up above. Thank you.